Welcome everyone. I hope that all of you are enjoying the summit thus far. My name is Crystal Hupp, and I'm the Business Operations Manager at Course Hero. And I am very excited to welcome you to this session, Engaging Students with Prosocial Games, which will be led by Matthew Farber. And we hope that this session will inspire all of you to share ideas with one another, and we thus welcome questions and comments and feedback. Comments and feedback can go to the chat. We would ask that you please direct questions to the Q&A feature so that I make sure that I see them so we can answer questions at the end of the session. Please do note that in order to respect people's privacy, and to make sure everybody feels comfortable in the chat, we won't be saving the chat for wider distribution for this session. But if you would like to, you're welcome to save the chat individually by using the 3 dots below the chat box to save it for your own personal use and reference. So now that we've got the functional aspects out of the way, I have the honor to introduce Matthew. Matthew is an associate professor of education technology at the University of Northern Colorado, and he's representing with his t-shirt today, or his sweatshirt. And he is the founder of the Gaming Cell Lab. His research is in the intersection of game-based learning and social and emotional learning. He studies how playing and making games can cultivate empathy, perspective taking, and ethical decision making. Please welcome me please help me welcome Matthew to the virtual stage.
Hi, thank you for having me. And welcome. I will start. There we go. I got to work on my functionality of Zoom and slides and everything. So as a reminder, you can turn on auto captioning here on Zoom, and that will also help facilitate any questions, any clarity of things I say. And I did share the link to the whole slide deck with the folks here at Course Hero, so you can have a copy of that as well, which, oh, thank you, Crystal just shared. I am quite heavy on sharing links and resources that people can use right out of the gate, so there will be a lot of links as well shared throughout this talk. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are on our blue marble. And as mentioned by Crystal, I am Matthew Farber. I am also the co-director of the Gaming SEL Lab, which is social and emotional learning, which is a set of teachable competencies or skills that are considered fundamental to success in school and life. Prosocial games are or can be, depending on the game, of course, an effective practice space for these skills. I'm going to be talking about different types of games and different types of scenarios for social and emotional learning and teaching in classrooms, but really a focus on higher education. But that can change based on what everybody is teaching as well. So it might be early childhood literacy, or it could be just your students in your classes right now. So more in social emotional learning. Social emotional learning includes emotional regulation and management, self and social awareness cultivation, and the abilities to make responsible and ethical decisions that lead to prosocial outcomes. The CASTLE framework, this is what we're looking at here, is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, Emotional Learning. It's actually one of more than 136 different SEL frameworks. I've done a lot of work with UNESCO MGIEP, which is the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education and Sustainable Programs. If you look up on the MGIEP website, there's the Rethinking Learning Report, which is a more global focused, particularly in the global South as well, approaches for social emotional learning. Social emotional learning refers to a whole set of these different types of competencies, and it was coined as a term back in 1994 that resulted also in CASEL as an organization. But of course, these competencies have been around as long as humans have been around. Just now, though, we are seeing neuroscience through fMRI and other studies show that many of these competencies are teachable. We do see changes in neural networks. But why is it now at the forefront of education? Is it because of COVID lockdown recovery now? Is it the mental health crisis globally and in the US? Are SEL skills the new 21st century skills? Are they soft skills? What if SEL does not address social oppression? Is it then just another form of cultural hegemonic miseducation? Dina Simmons wrote, quote, SEL that fails to address our socio-political reality and combat racial and social injustice will not prepare our young people for the world they inherit. So we need to keep all of these in mind when we're talking about the why of social emotional learning. And I wrote about these constructs, framing different types of games that can be used to provide rich opportunities to impact youth well-being, whether it's through social modeling or mood management, in my book that's widely available here. All right, so let's start off with this mini activity that we'll use Zoom chat. I don't like to just keep blasting information, so I have a few of these interactive activities that will use the chat feature in Zoom. I am not one for like cameras on and going in breakout rooms, so there will be none of that. We're going to keep everything to Zoom chat. So right here is called the blob tree. It's a pretty common activity. If you don't use it, I recommend using it in class. Please type in chat what number of the blob figure that resembles how you're feeling right now. So it's a social emotional check-in. Okay, great. So why do we play games? Well, we play games together to connect and to feel more human. Before the pandemic, which we are still in the pandemic, but before the height of the pandemic and lockdowns, playing games together was already a social experience. More than half of frequent game players reported that playing together helps them connect with friends and other people. In fact, that went up to 65%, as you can see right here. It's a highly social activity. That could be playing a game, a multiplayer game together. It could also be playing a game and talking about the game as well together. On the onset of the pandemic, sales also skyrocketed in the US. People spent about $11 billion on video games in the first quarter of 2020, and it just keeps going up. This is from research from the Entertainment Software Association in the United States. In chat, we'll just ask, here's another question. What does everybody think the average age of a video game player is? All right, well, from what I'm seeing, last time I read this report, it was, I think, 35 years old. I also read something yesterday that there are more women that play games than teenage boys. So it's important to embrace the fact that games are the campfire of the 21st century. We all play games. I ask this sometimes at conferences, and sometimes no hands go up. And then I ask, like, who has a game on their smartphone? And almost all hands go up. So the word gamer is also a preloaded term. Games are interesting in that they offer a different palette of emotions because of player agency over the experience. This is a quote on the side from Dr. Ispister from UC Santa Cruz, who wrote the book How Games Move Us, Emotion by Design. In games, we can feel emotions differently, such as pride, guilt, regret, shame, or joy. And yes, there are research citations for all of these emotions in different specific academic studies. As brothers on the run in this game, stealing food in Life is Strange feels different to players from reading or watching Jean Valjean, the hungry peasant in Victor Hugo's Les Mis, steal bread. You're on the run and you need to steal food for your brother here, and you have this choice. Games are very good at creating these thought experiments, like the trolley problem, for instance, where you feel different because you are taking that action and then experiencing the consequences from that action, even if it's just a vicarious bit there. So it makes it a very powerful form of media. All right, now let's look at a reflection on a word. This is an activity I borrowed from my friends at the National Writing Project about humanizing. So in Zoom chat, please leave a brief note. It could be a less than a sentence, a couple of words, what humanizing in education means to you. Oh, we should also not let definitions get in the way of, like, is this a game? Is this not a game? All of these interactions can also be considered game-like activities. These are all prosocial, asking how you're feeling today as a blob figure, asking you to share a meditation on a word like humanizing and sharing positive affirmations. These are ways we can model prosocial games. Terrific. Thank you for sharing, everybody. So this is another resource I wanted to share, which is Greater Good in Education. And it's also important, of course, to define what we mean by prosocial. Greater Good in Education is a terrific resource. They are part of Berkeley, and they have a program. They have all sorts of resources just in Greater Good, but in education, they have all these wonderful downloadable resources that you can use to create prosocial activities in your class, and they're totes free. So highly recommend them. According to Greater Good in Education, the goal is to help educators better understand the roots of kind, helpful, or prosocial behavior and emotional well-being, and how they can build those skills in themselves, their colleagues, and their students. This is the link right here. So there are all these different activities, and many of them are very much game-like. They may be simulations, but we can all look at them in coursework as being like a game. So let's look at the impact of a prosocial game with curriculum. With UNESCO MGIEP, which is, again, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development, we studied the effects of a game-based curriculum using the interactive Syrian refugee migration video game, Bury Me, My Love, as a multimodal text. What you're seeing in the image that's animated on the side here is the gameplay. It plays on a smartphone, and it's an award-winning game, and you play as a couple that were separated at the border, and it plays in real time. So the 3 dots, when you're waiting to hear back from your partner, can take hours. And you can switch that off so gameplay is faster, let's say in the confines of a 40-minute class meeting or a 1-hour class meeting, but you can also not do that. And we created curriculum around this. So it's not just assuming, here, play this game and you're going to learn things because it's a game. We don't like to take that view with social emotional learning and empathy games and perspective taking, because we don't do that with books. So why would we do that with games? Just because games have like these different interactions, books also have interactions. You're imagining and thinking about how characters look and interact. And we want to create experiences that will help mediate and facilitate learning, right? We recruited participants from 5 schools in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates and New Delhi in India. And students play the game and engage with the curriculum that supported it. Examples of the curriculum here are where students reflect on gameplay. They were asked social and emotional related questions, such as identifying characters' emotional states at different points in the gameplay experience. Another curricular prompt asks students to step into character shoes by inferring what dialogue might be, providing additional game prompts and dialogue, and that became active role playing as a pedagogy for building compassion. And of course, we published the results, academics. As hypothesized, a positive correlation was revealed between empathy and compassion. More specifically, we found changes in compassion for others to be correlated with cognitive empathy, that is, thinking about how somebody else feels. There are lots of types of empathy, cognitive and affective empathy. Dr. Kat Schreier and I wrote another article, a systematic literature review on the word game and the word empathy, and we found over a dozen different types of empathy. For instance, cultural empathy and historical empathy are different. They're also different than empathy for UX design, right? So there are a lot of nuances when we're talking about social emotional learning and then also empathy itself. So in other words, what we found here is compassion is empathy in action. And action is what games do best. But not just games. With thoughtful guidance from educators and caregivers, games can help youth experientially develop SEL skills. I shouldn't be looking at the Q&A right now, but I do see a question here about board games, and a lot of board games can be used to develop these skills as well. I'm going to cover one in a later slide. Here's another game that I share in my book. And this is called Kind Words, Lo-Fi Chill Beats to Write To. And this is a game about writing nice letters to real people, writing and encouraging letters in a cozy room, and trading stickers and listening to chill beats. It's a multiplayer game about being nice. It's not social media. You can't really connect with other people, but you do read letters, as you can see being shared on the side there, and you can respond to these letters. It's a nice space of positive affirmation. Other places for positive gameplay are how games can actually save the world. Extra Life is one of my favorite organizations. They're featured in my book. It's part of the Children's Miracle Network, which is a network of 170 children's hospitals in the United States and in Canada. Its slogan is "Play Games, Heal Kids." And it's very popular with video game streamers and on different college campuses, and also esports players, competitive electronic sports players. And esports is going to be part of the Olympics this upcoming, is it this year? The next Olympics coming up. Today, $70 million have been raised for Children's Miracle Network hospitals through Prosocial video game play. So on to non-digital games. Awkward Moment is a terrific one. Awkward Moment is for 3 to 8 players. Awkward Moment was developed at Tilt Factor Games, which is at Dartmouth College, and it was created as part of an NSF, National Science Foundation grant on gender bias in STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and math fields. The game plays, if you haven't played, like Cards Against Humanity or Apples to Apples. It's a type of game where you get these social situations, and then how do you react to them? But rather than picking the funniest or silliest, the reaction cards can differ. It could be pick the most appropriate reaction, or the least appropriate, or the silliest, or the most serious, right? Moment cards are generally social situations that can happen to anyone at any time. You write a text to your friend, but accidentally send it to your mom. But there are several in there that are about gender and social bias, but not too many, which is what they called intermixing in the study at Dartmouth College, which might lead players to say, hey, this is trying to teach me something. This game is widely available. I purchased it on Amazon.com, but you can buy it at Target or Barnes and Noble bookshops in the United States, pretty much anywhere, or direct, I think. This is what the set of cards looks like here, looking at social bias. This moment card is pulled from a real t-shirt that was actually sold at stores, I think back in 2011. And it's a social game, so you sit in a circle and you debate, well, what is the hardest reaction to do? So what we've done in different studies is we use the alternate gameplay modes. So it's kind of an awkward story and make your own awkward. Well, we've run game jams with different student populations here in Northern Colorado, including first generation Latinx students, including students that were experiencing intellectual and developmental challenges to come play the game and then build their own type of game, create their own cards, which is a terrific way to use non-digital games because they're so lightweight. So what I'd like you to do now is to do it. We'll do it right here. Let's share your own awkward moment in chat, if you'd like. Here's your permission to be awkward. Oh, by the way, I used to bring these card decks to other conferences. Well, I still do, I guess, but well, my son's 12 now, but when he was younger in second grade, he saw me doing that, and then he asked for index cards, and he made like a elementary school version. The main version's for middle school, but I play it in all my classes. Any awkward social encounter. You can make it up if it's not actually yours. That's a good one. A game like this, by the way, I find is an excellent icebreaker activity rather than your normal, like, cheesy icebreaker, getting to know students. Playing a game together just messages that you're engendering play and fun and really freedom to express in an educational setting. But you can also then talk about the boundaries you're creating, expectations, and just keep it open to conversation. I see the photography one there. It's interesting. There's a game in my book I described called Paparazzi, where students cluster together in a big room. They stand up, and one person is the paparazzi, and they have to go around pretending to take pictures of one person. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide in interest of time. Oh, that is awkward. But you'd be surprised. My wife teaches preschool 4-year-olds. We have a universal pre-K here in Colorado, and yeah, a lot of young children, even through elementary school, will call teachers mom and dad. Lots of oopses. So I want to share with everybody, in case you don't know, Games for Change. Games for Change is a terrific pro-social resource. Many video games and some board games are on their website. There's also the Student Challenge, which is about youth making games on pro-social topics. And even if you don't participate in the Student Challenge, all the resources on there about making games, but also the prompts and other topics you can share with students are all there, and they're completely free. Games for Change is a nonprofit. They provide support, visibility, and shared resources to individuals and organizations using serious games for social change. They have an event at the United Nations coming up with UNESCO MGIEP on the Sustainable Development Goals. I was invited, but unfortunately I can't make it due to conflict in scheduling. But they also have a festival that's that week also, later on in July. They're sort of like the Sundance Film Festival, not affiliated with them, but in the way they celebrate pro-social independent games. And not always independent games. Minecraft Education is a non-independent game owned by Microsoft that's celebrated by them as well. But I encourage you to visit gamesforchange.org. They also catalog many of the games that I'm speaking about, and they're a terrific resource. An example of a game that Games for Change celebrates is Life is Strange: True Colors, which centers on the story of 21-year-old Alex Chen, who has supernatural ability to sense and manipulate others' emotions. Life is Strange this spring won the Peabody Award, which is a prestigious honor that celebrates media that shares, quote, stories that matter. In this entry, projecting empathy is Alex's superpower. So the hoodie guy has a blue aura. Other characters have different color aura based on their mood. So it's literally putting empathy into action. And in the game, you make choices like hugging or handshaking. And I'm going to play a quick trailer here, but not the whole trailer because of time. Whoop, where'd my video go? Weird. Well, you could see it online. And because of time, I guess that's fine. Because I did just, of course, show these slides. But I highly recommend checking out Life is Strange: True Colors if you haven't yet. Another game is called Dots Home. I won't play all the trailers because of time, but Dots Home is an award-winning single-player game, two-dimensional narrative-driven video game. It follows a young Black woman in Detroit living in her grandmother's beloved home as she travels through time to relive key moments in her family's history where race, place, and home collide in difficult choices. And it's on mobile. You can play it on iPhone or Android. Before Your Eyes, this is a BAFTA, British Awards, award-winning narrative adventure that tells the story of a soul's journey into the afterlife. I'll play a quick trailer here, but just so we're aware, the gameplay interface is literally blinking your eye. It uses a web camera, and there's a mobile version of this as well.
Just think back to the very beginning, first thing that you can remember. And I'm gonna send you there. Every time that you blink, you're gonna jump forward in time. Could be a second, could be 5 years.
It's Chloe, your neighbor.
But understand, no matter how much you like it, you're not gonna be able to stay.
Benny? Ready to come up here?
That's just how this thing works. So, if you understand what I'm saying, blink over my hand here.
And again, these are all shared in the slides, so you can check these out afterwards. And Games for Change website has many as well. So great. How do you teach with these games, right? I mean, this is all kind of interesting, and I think it's interesting. But what do you do with this in reality, right? So that's what I want to pivot to right now. How to embed prosocial games in coursework. So one way to do it is in our Rethinking Learning report, which Crystal has the link to share, which is to really, in essence, what this is saying is to treat a game like this like any other high quality curricular resource, like you would treat a book or a poem. And integrate it thoughtfully into the learning environment through discussions. It's not everybody on a computer with a game license staring at a screen. It should not really just be like that. So let's play another quick game here. And I'm going to make this a little more brief, but I'll just use the first of the slides here, which is you're going to live off the grid. What do you bring? And this is a game activity that we developed as part of curriculum. So you're going to be like Henry David Thoreau, if you're not from the United States, famous author from the mid-1800s about living transcendentally with nature. So you're going to live off the grid. What would you definitely bring? So please share 3 items in chat what you would definitely bring. Okay, and again, with time, I'm going to move forward a little bit. What we do here is we have students play this with cards, right? The cards actually, the cards look like this. We have a free version and a print to play version. Then we say, what might you bring and won't bring? And looking at what you typed in, of these items, what types of needs did they fulfill? And you don't have to type an answer in. Just something to think about. And this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we could discuss with students, or alternately look at First Nations perspectives that have a different perspective than Maslow. And these materials lead to gameplay of Walden a Game, which is a video game that was developed by Tracy Fullerton at the University of Southern California and her Game Innovation Lab team. And working with Tracy, we developed curriculum around the game that is totally free. The education version, that is, Walden a Game EDU, is totally free to play. You don't have to have any students share any personal data or create accounts. It's completely free. And it also plays right in a browser. It streams right in a Chromebook, for instance. And there are sections on self-reliance, on social emotional learning, and all these different modules here that you can have students play. And one is taking a mindful walk in the game and outside of the game and for real. There's another one on civic engagement. The image in the bottom, the photograph, has Tracy there on the right. In the middle, there is Emile Hirsch, who's the voice of Henry David Thoreau. If you've seen the film Into the Wild, that is Emile Hirsch, who's the star of that film. And he's also in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's another activity we have here on critical geography, which is thinking about where you live and who lived there before you lived there. And here we ask a question, and these cards can be shuffled in any order, which would surface marginalized populations and people stories that are, quote, lost in the shuffle of cultural hegemonic history. All of this is free. And as of last week, Tracy, it's not even officially announced yet, but it is completely free for everybody. So I strongly encourage you to check out the lesson plans and curriculum and play the game modules. They take about 20 minutes each, and it's completely free. Another approach here is pairing books and games together. This is quite powerful. This is something that we recently published 2 months ago in the Journal of Children's and Libraries. We take this game called Lost Words. I'll play the quick trailer.
Hello, Journal. Since I was little, I've always dreamed of becoming a writer. We went to see Gran today in the hospital. I want to write a story. There once was a young girl who thought she would never see outside her home village. But the land of Astoria had other ideas. It had great and terrible adventures planned for her. All you need is a leap of faith. Despite the darkness, Robin's hope guided her. I need to finish the story so Gran can read it when she feels better.
So in this game, it's a 2D platformer game like Mario Brothers, right? But way more emotionally involved. It has a very deep narrative. Words are used which have action. So the word break will break objects, for instance. It was written by Rhianna Pratchett, the daughter of Terry Pratchett, the famed fantasy writer. And there are 2 concurrent stories, one of a hero's journey, which is what you see there with break and rise. But the other is mapped to the stages of grief in gameplay. And we find books, written texts, to be terrific to pair together with video games, because then you are taking the experience of grief that you feel through agency of playing the game, and then you can bring that to a book that has a similar theme. The thing about jellyfish is also told with a journal and a quest. A young girl's best friend passes away from an apparent drowning, and there's a lot of overlap and similarity. In fact, in this article, Dr. Erickson and myself map out different book and game pairings here. And we also suggest ways to play it in the class. You don't need everybody having their own version of the game. Students can play together in a hot seat. In other words, they pass a controller or they take turns at the keyboard playing a game, like screening a documentary or a film or video for the class. There are other considerations I'd like to forefront here, which is to, you can add a game into a syllabus, but please be sure about universal design for learning and accessibility with games. Maybe include a wide variety of games, making it optional, or other types of texts. And again, Games for Change can be used as your resource. One last activity, but we are really short on time. I really prefer to save for Q&A, but just think about, what do you think games actually would need to cultivate prosocial behavior? And because of time, I'll just go to the big reveal about what games need. But I see a couple here. I see a goal. Games need you. I remixed this activity from a game designer, Anna Anthropi, but games need you, right? Just like books need you. They need you as faculty and you as the help. So here is all of my contact information, and question time.
So I believe you had answered the question about board games and helping students develop skills. I know we had a lot of questions yesterday, just faculty were mentioning that they see more and more students coming with social anxiety into the classroom and making it very difficult for collaboration and participation in the classroom. So I was wondering, are there ways that we could use games and these techniques to help students overcome social anxiety?
Well, that's a really good question. So I think playing in small groups is fun. But it can also be very meaningful in that situation. I actually have like an escape room type of game that I have students play. I think if you have students play together in a cooperative game with a mutual goal, and I talk about that in my book too. Games like Pandemic is one, but you know, a board game where you're not playing against each other, but you're playing against the board game itself. And escape room games are really powerful like that, breakout games, because you're working together to solve a goal or challenge, but it puts the socializing kind of secondary. Like this, you know, the awkward icebreaker is not quite there. And if you don't want to totally participate, you can kind of step back and watch the other people in your group solve that problem or puzzle, and then you can, you know, enter in when you feel comfortable to do that. It's important not to grade game play, but maybe the reflections afterwards, or have those experiences connect afterwards to something else in an activity.
Okay, and somebody is last question here asked where they can get resources if they wanted to make an escape room for their classroom.
Oh, that's a great question too. I mean, I put that in my book also, but if you look at Edutopia, they have a lot of really good resources there. And you can look at Breakout EDU. They have some resources as well. And I wrote a blog actually for Course Hero about maybe 4 years ago on that topic as well. I don't have the link handy, but there are a lot of really interesting resources online you could find. And never feel constrained to the resources. Like, you don't have to be a perfect person at like Google Docs or something to do that. You can even just leave clues around the classroom and things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the presentation today, Matthew. This is really great, really informative, really exciting. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in the chat today. It was a really, really great discussion as well. For those who can stay with us today, I would like to invite you to join one of our upcoming sessions that's available, and I can drop a link in the chat as well so you can see what's coming up next. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Take care.